Hey friends, been working on something. I'm going to share it with you and then I'll talk a little bit about it. That is the first half of the Allemande by Bach. It's from Partita number 2 in C minor by Johan Sebastian Bach. And I have a history with this piece because I performed the entire Partita on a concert in college. And I had probably certainly what I recall as being my most traumatic memory slip ever. In that I got to a certain point in the piece, and as I've revisited it recently, I've remembered where that is, and it's almost like I can arrive at that point in the piece, and sort of the impression of that feeling comes back, that feeling of being on stage and going blank. And so what happened was I played up to a certain point. I'll show it to you in a sec. I arrived sort of at the first cadence back into C minor before the piece then kind of develops. And it was like the piece just fizzled in front of my eyes. I had the experience of playing the first 7, 8 bars and feeling like I was being transported in a positive way. I felt like I was hearing and feeling the music. The different parts were speaking. I was hearing the sustained notes as the other notes illustrated their point, and then the sustained note would pick up with a new part. I was like hyper conscious of what was happening in the music in a way that I'd never really felt before. And being on stage was part of that. The fact that there was this intensified consciousness in the room, this audience. It was in Gans Hall, which, total tangent, was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect, when he was still an apprentice to Sullivan. I forget the man's first name, but when Frank Lloyd Wright was still an apprentice to somebody, Sullivan, who designed the whole building, Gans Hall was designed as a sort of like internship project by Frank Lloyd Wright. So anyway, I'm in this beautiful room with a bunch of people. I play this piece and it's just, I'm feeling the beauty of it in a way that I'd never felt before in practice. I didn't have that much experience performing classical music in a concert setting at that point. And I think something about that, about being transported in that way, took me out of the intellectual, kind of like mind-based way that I was accustomed to learning music. And while that was a beautiful thing to experience, it meant that I had not built the foundation of really knowing the piece well enough because it literally just fizzled before my eyes. And I went back to the beginning. I was like, okay, well, let me try another running start at this. And I got to the same exact point, and the same exact memory blank happened. I just went, and it was like ice in my veins. You know, it's that. I don't know how many of you have had the experience of having a memory slip, like a full-on, not just like a momentary memory slip, which is already like getting an injection of ice into your veins, but a full-on memory slip where the piece just disappears. It's intense. But that's what happened, and it happened twice. And then I didn't really have anywhere to go. Then I was like, okay, what do I do? So I just sort of improvised my way to a C minor cadence. It was really interesting because I remember improvising, and again, that heightened sense of the music was there, and I was like, I could almost compose something right now, but I kind of couldn't quite grab it. I couldn't get my hands around it. I couldn't get my mind, there was too much fear in my system. So even as I was having this most beautiful of experiences, I also had a great deal of fear and sort of like disappointment in my system. It was a hard moment. But I've come back to the piece recently, and it's interesting, as I play those opening bars, I can come back to the same feeling, the same positive feeling of just like this beautiful, beautiful counterpoint. I'll show you where it was. And then I was like, what's next? It goes on. Etc. But that moment, sitting on a C minor triad, the world dissolved. And that beautiful feeling of being enveloped by music, being infused with music, of having the lines of the music flowing through me in a way. You know, when I think about my mindfulness approach to piano teaching that I've developed over the last several years, but much more recently in my, as far as my teaching goes, I think about how, you know, ultimately, any deep musical performance is inherently mindfulness based. It's not something that we need to bring to the practice of music as a new element. It's something that is inherent in the making of great music. And I mean, I was in one of the most mindful states that I ever felt myself go into in the moments leading up to that. And I think it's how I managed that has been somewhat of an issue, because I didn't really know. I think that in my immediate response to that moment, I felt I placed more emphasis on the failure, right? On my inability to play the piece, to actually execute the piece, than I did on the incredible beauty that I had experienced moments before, and which in some ways was likely part of the issue. You know, it was like I was opening a new turning over a new leaf, entering a new realm of musical wakefulness. And I just kind of couldn't quite handle it yet. I was on stage. I hadn't practiced enough. I hadn't practiced with an awareness of that state. And so it sort of overwhelmed me. And I'm coming back to this piece. Something maybe like 2 weeks ago, something in my mind was like, go find Bach Partita number 2. You know, and I have to say, like, if you've followed any of my posts, you know that I'm in a sort of a journey of releasing some injuries, some compounded, kind of calcified injuries. Not calcified, that's a bad word to use, but some of my bones in my wrist have been really kind of frozen together and really unable to move properly for years. And as I've come back to healing that, I've had somebody working on my joints, helping me kind of like release that. And as I've gone through that process, it's bringing back just giant emotional swings, and I'm recreating circumstances that I remember from when these injuries were produced, not the exact circumstances, obviously, but circumstances that give me a duplicate feeling of where I was when I created these injuries. And as that's been happening, I just suddenly had the urge to revisit this piece. And because something about it feels like it's a portal for me. It's a portal for me that I maybe at the time wasn't quite able to walk through. But that doesn't mean that it's not still a portal for me. Movement goes on, and I'll share it with you at another time. But it's powerful to revisit this and to not just feel the beauty of the piece itself, which is remarkable, but also to re-enter this sensitive area of my own musical background, feel it again, share it again, and see where this portal takes me. So, that's what I got, folks. Thanks for watching. So much love. I'll see you soon.